my little helper for the day. Hi. Meow. Hello and welcome to Life with Suggies. My name is Tiffany, and today I want to talk about a topic that I see floating around YouTube and TikTok all the time, and that is that a sugar glider makes a bad pet. So I personally don't agree with this comment because honestly, in my personal opinion, for the wrong person, any animal can make a bad pet. Like if you work a daytime job, you work long hours, you're never home, you have a dog sitting at the house, and then when you get home, you just want to sleep because you work those long hours, then you could argue that a dog does not make a good pet for you. So, truly, I think that a sugar glider can make a really good pet for someone. You just have to be able to put in the time and commit to their personal care needs, and it is much different from having a cat or a dog. So I think it is more of a tailored question to the specific person that's going to be taking care of this pet, and I don't think it's fair to just put an umbrella over sugar gliders altogether and say that they make a bad pet when you really just don't fit the lifestyle of what it would take to own a sugar glider. So on that note, that brings me to the topic of the day, and that is a sugar glider right for me? So I'm going to very briefly touch over some bullet points that I have picked out to talk about. So first and foremost, do you have enough space? Sugar gliders do require a very large cage. Our cage that we have for our sugar gliders is about the height of me. It is approximately 65 inches tall. So sugar gliders like to jump and glide and run around, especially at night when they are most active. So I think it's unfair to cram them into a little cage because they do require a lot of space. So that's first and foremost, you have an area in your house that you can fit a large size cage. For our sugar gliders, they do have their own room. So we have a double coordination cage inside of their room, but then we keep the doors off of the hinges so that way they can come and go as they please at night. We definitely made the room glider safe. Like we covered up all the outlets and made sure there wasn't anything like exposed wires or anything that they could hurt themselves on. So we do have a glider safe room for them. But if you are going to just, have them in their cage, maybe you don't have the means to give them an entire room because our gliders are just spoiled. Make sure that you get them a large size cage and put a bunch of toys, enrichment items, everything like that inside so that they can be happy and play at night when you are sleeping and not able to give them attention. Another topic that I do briefly want to touch on is the fact that they are nocturnal animals. So if you are not a night owl, then they may not be a good fit for you and your lifestyle because every glider is different, but in our situation, our sugar gliders wake up around 8 p.m. at night and they're up for maybe like 30 minutes to an hour. They get a little something to eat and then they take a nap and then they don't wake back up until like 2 a.m., somewhere around there. I mean, it's kind of different every night, but for the most part, that's what time they are going to be waking up and getting their boost of energy to run around and play. So if you are not a night person, then they might not be the best pet for you. Something else that is super, super important to think about before adopting a sugar glider is, do you have an exotic vet nearby? Exotic vets are kind of far, I don't want to say few between, but there's not a ton. Like for me personally, I live in a very busy city that has 50 million of every type of business, but when it comes to exotic vets, we only have two and they are both an hour away. So you definitely want to call around and make sure that you have somewhere that is at least an hour or closer that does see sugar gliders, since they are technically an exotic pet. We also have a college that's not too far away that will also see exotic vets because they have a veterinary program. So that's another thing. If you can't find a vet nearby, then maybe look into seeing if there is a college locally to you that has a veterinary unit. Hello. Are you saying hi? Is that, are you talking about me, Mom? Hello. Did I wake you up? I'm sorry. Okay, where was I? You got me distracted. Hello. I don't have snackies out here for you. Another really important thing to think about as well is on the note of them being exotic pets, you do want to make sure that your housing does allow you to have that type of pet in your home. If you own your house, obviously it doesn't matter, but if you are renting, like in our I keep hitting my microphone and I feel like that is just wrecking the audio. If you do rent, like we do rent our home, then typically landlords are not that thrilled about having exotic pets. I know the last place that we lived was an apartment unit and they specifically said no exotic pets in the lease. So something that you can do to get around this is to get an ESA letter. That stands for Emotional Support Animal. So if you have maybe anxiety or depression or something else, you could, if you see a therapist, you could talk to them and say, hey, I need an ESA letter to allow me to have my sugar gliders at my house. So typically they are pretty willing to do this for you. I know that my therapist had no issue writing it for me. I did hear that you can, in some cases, go and see a family doctor and get an ESA letter from them. I asked mine and she said no. So probably like case by case basis there. But if you don't have a therapist, then another thing that you could do is you could go online and purchase an ESA letter. For that, you know, path of going about it, I would recommend that you do a lot of research into the website. Make sure it is a reputable place, that they're not just, taking your money and then giving you something that doesn't even qualify for an ESA letter. It basically just has your name and the date. Very important to have the date because they are only valid for 1 year. After that, you do have to renew them. So another thing to think about if you are buying it, that you are going to have to buy it every year. And the ones that I was looking at was like $200 to buy the letter. So kind of steep. But anyway, it just has your name, it has the date. It says, because of so and so dealing with XYZ, it would be, in my professional opinion, helpful for them to have 2 sugar gliders as an emotional support animal, something of that nature. So when you do give that to your landlord, it is against the law for them to discriminate against you and tell you that you can't have them if you have a doctor's note saying that you need to have them for personal reasons, mental health reasons, anything like that. So that is kind of a workaround for it. I'm not telling anyone to break the law. I'm just saying if you happen to have anxiety, then you are allowed to have an emotional support animal. Case in point. So on that note, I did mention the letter saying that you have 2, and that is because you need to at least have 2 or more sugar gliders when you are adopting them. They themselves have a lot of anxiety, depression, loneliness. They are prey animals out in the wild, so they don't typically like to be alone. They are usually in groups and colonies of like 20 or so out there in the wild. You definitely need to get at least 2. If you only get 1 glider and you're like, oh no, I'm going to give them a lot of attention, I'm going to be around them all the time, they're never going to be lonely. The fact of the matter is, you have a life outside of having your family pet. So you're going to have times where you need to go to sleep. You're going to have times where you need to go out and do something, and maybe they are up and about. Sometimes they do get up, a couple times throughout the day or sleep through the night. So it's not really like an exact, this is what they do every single night type thing. So it is cruel to only have 1 of them. They do get very lonely. And if they are lonely and they do get sad, depressed, whatever, that could come with some behavioral issues as well. So not only can it be emotionally, physically, mentally harmful for them, it could also lead to some very bad behaviors as well due to them being bored or lonely. They could start, acting out, biting, crabbing a lot. So you definitely don't want that. You want your sugar gliders to have a long, happy, healthy life, and they need a friend. So you can be their friend too, but they also need a cage mate. So at least 2, maybe even 3 or more if you can, afford to house them. We currently have 2 sugar gliders, but we are adopting a baby in a few weeks. So I do plan on bringing you guys along with that as well. I'm going to do like a vlog style video of picking him up and bringing him home, doing some colony integration videos. I think that would be really interesting to watch. And every colony is different on how accepting they are of a new member into their family. So I thought that would be cool to do some informational videos and some vlog style videos and kind of bring you guys along on that journey with me. Another thing that I do think that we should touch base on as well is the cost associated with getting a sugar glider. So the cage is honestly going to be the most important aspect of cost. So our cage is a double critter nation. That is the preferred cage for a sugar glider. They don't make that many that are tailored specifically for them, but the double critter nation checks all the boxes on what is needed from a cage. So like I said, our cage is really, really big. It's about 64, 65 inches tall. It's also really wide as well, so they have plenty of room to roam around. The bar spacing has to be half an inch or smaller, or they will slip through the cracks, and you definitely don't want a lost sugar glider roaming around your house. And then another thing that you might want to invest in, it's not mandatory, but we did get a cage cover for our sugar gliders. If you're going to be having their cage that's maybe in the living room and it has a lot of bright windows, you definitely want to make sure that you get something to cover the cage during the day when they're sleeping, because they are going to prefer for it to be dark most of the time anyway, because they have enormous pupils and it lets in a lot of light. So it could be harmful for their eyes to get too much sunlight. Have their own little safe space for them, depending on where you have your cage. If you have your cage in a spare room that's usually pretty dark, then I don't think one is necessary, but we did invest in one, and it did cost about $20 to $30, so it's not that big of an expense really. Then another very important thing to purchase for your sugar glider are their sleeping pouches. So this is what a sleeping pouch looks like. It's got these two little hooks over here that you use to hang inside of the cage. You want to have the amount of sugar gliders you have. That's how many pouches you want to have inside of the cage for them. And sometimes more, definitely not less, but they have different types of pouches. This is just the standard style. It's no sew, it's anti-pill fleece. Very, very important. If you see any stitching on the inside where they are going to be sleeping, that's definitely not a safe pouch for them, because they could get their nails caught inside of the pouch, and that's just not a good thing, you know, because they can injure themselves very, very easily. And I do plan on having a safety video come out fairly soon, so we can talk about all of the different ways that sugar gliders could injure themselves and just things that you can do to prevent it. So no sew, anti-pill. They also have some like open habitat type hammock pouches. So there's a bunch of different style pouches that you can get for them, and they do range probably around like $10 to $20 depending on the size of it, the style of it, everything like that. So you definitely want to get enough that you can switch them out and wash them, and they still have a pouch to use while you're washing the other one. So I would say invest maybe around like $50 into some pouches. And then another cost to think about is their food. This I am for sure going to make another video about, because the diet and food plan for them is it's not a lot, but it's kind of a lot, because it's just very particular. You can't just go and buy them food like a dog, go buy them kibble and call it a day. You definitely have to make them their own food, so it can take time, which is another thing to keep in mind if a sugar glider would be right for you or not, is you do have to make them their own food. I prepare mine, freeze it, and then that way I can just thaw it the day of. So that is another thing to keep in mind. Food, I would say probably spend like $30 a month on. It's nothing crazy. The treats can be expensive sometimes, depending on where you get them, because you want to make sure that you are ordering them from reputable places. You can't just go to a pet store and get sugar glider treats for the most part. You need to order them online. And then the last thing I'm going to discuss today for cost is toys. So toys for sugar gliders, if you've done any research, you know, are very, very, very expensive. Some toys can range upwards of $100 mark on Etsy and stuff like that, approved vendors, of course, but I am going to make a whole video on toy safety and toy making, because there are some things that I have personally made for my sugar gliders just using supplies that I've gotten from like Goodwill or on Amazon. So I am also going to be making a full video on that, so stay tuned for that. So they can be expensive. They could be cheaper if you make them yourself, but you do still have to buy the supplies for it. So honestly, I would put toys as like the second most expensive thing for sugar gliders, because the cage is definitely number one. Number two is the toys, also because you don't want them getting bored, because like I said, they can get behavioral issues. So finding enough toys to be able to rotate them around and make sure that they're not getting bored can sometimes be a challenge, especially if your sugar gliders are like mine and get bored of a toy in like 3 minutes. Something else to keep in mind. So if you've stuck around this long in the video, first I want to say thank you. I do have a lot of ideas for content that I am going to be making in the future, such as the diet video I talked about, toy making, toy safety, a little vlog style of when we pick up our new sugar glider baby in a week or so, and then also just some colony integration instruction video, because that is a long process. You can't just throw a sugar glider in with sugar gliders that are established and expect them to just get along. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I am going to make videos about that. And then also just a basic care video as well. I kind of briefly touched on some topics, but this video was mainly to just put all the facts out there and just decide if a sugar glider really would make a right fit for you. Because like I said, everyone's different, your lifestyles are different, your personalities are different, and maybe a sugar glider might not be right for you. But hopefully by the end of this video, you were able to decide if that would fit for you and your family. Again, thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.